than you can see. And he said, if you were to get your life together, you could go on to do extraordinary things. I believe that the greatest tragedy is life is that not that it ends too soon, it's that we wait too long to begin it. Inside me and inside you and inside everyone watching this is an unlimited, untapped possibility and potential. And when we get that, and we then dedicate our actions to work that has passion and meaning, and pick up that mantle of our opus and march forward with courageous action, we can and we will change the world. And so my quote is what Gus gave me on that park bench 30 years ago, that there's more to you than you can see.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of the peopleHum interview series. This is your host Neha at peopleHum.
peopleHum is an end-to-end, one-view, integrated human capital management automation platform, the winner of the 2019 Global Cody Award that's specifically built for crafted employee experiences and the future of work. We run the peopleHum blog and channel that receives more than 400,000 visitors a year, and we also publish several interviews with well-known names globally every month.
We have with us today Joe Roberts. Joe is the founder of Joe Roberts Speaking Incorporated. As someone who went from Skid Row to CEO in 12 years, Joe uses his experience to help companies and people redefine what's truly possible. He's an expert in resiliency and change. Having experienced both catastrophic failure and extraordinary success, he teaches us how to overcome perceived limitations and create high-performance results. He delivers extraordinary keynotes that are inspiring, relevant, authentic, unforgettable, and at times very funny. By tailoring each presentation, participants leave with the specific tools to apply in an ever-changing world. He's a CEO, entrepreneur, and former homeless addict, and his life experience surely provides teachable moments that drive a fresh and unique perspective to common problems everybody faces. He's the recipient of an honorary doctorate from Laurentian University and was recognized by the Senate of Canada with their Canada 150 medal. He's also been awarded the Meritorious Service Medal MSM from the Governor General of Canada. Outside of work, Joe is an endurance triathlete. He pushed a shopping cart 9,064 kilometers across Canada for charity. So that sounds very, very interesting. And we're so glad that Joe joined us today to share his experiences as well as his insight with all of us. Welcome to peopleHum, Joe. It's a pleasure to have you on here.
It's a pleasure to be on the program. Thanks for inviting me.
Thanks a lot, Joe. Jumping right into the interview, please tell us about Joe Roberts Speaking Incorporated that's been running successfully for the past 18 years.
Sure. So I came from the corporate world. In 1996, I started my first business outside of college, and it was a content development company. And we grew that company basically to my level of incompetence. We started in the basement of a little, our small business in North Vancouver in British Columbia, Canada, and quickly grew. We basically rode the wave of the internet explosion in the late 1990s. Basically what we did is we were on the cutting edge of content development back before, YouTube existed, Twitter existed, any of those things. And we understood how to strategically position companies to not just get seen, but to use their websites to drive business and to do various different business functions, which now sounds very normal, but back then it was very few people that knew how to do what we did. In 2003, I left the business world. My daughter was born, and I reevaluated what I wanted to do. I was putting in 70, 80-hour work weeks. I was burning out, stressed out, and I wasn't really enjoying my work anymore. And I began to struggle with my health. And I wanted to do work that had a lot more meaning. And one of the things that I absolutely loved as an entrepreneur and as the CEO of Mindware was helping people access a bigger part of themselves. And so I wrote a book and I started to speak. Now, what was interesting is I went to the marketplace to share my business experience, but what ended up happening is I ended up sharing more of my life experience. Because what happened before I got into business is that I came from a pretty broken and shattered place. In 1989, I was homeless. I lived on the streets of East Vancouver. I was probably in one of the worst places you can be at in the Western world. I got a second chance thanks to my mom and help from a police officer. I went back to college, graduated with honors, and then went out into the world. And in less than 12 years, I was a celebrated Canadian entrepreneur. When I went out and began to speak, I didn't talk about that. I didn't want to be vulnerable. I didn't want to expose that part of my life. There was still some shame attached to it. But what I found out that was amazing is when I did start to do that, that's when things really took off for me. And so this book became a national bestseller, and I started to get asked to speak at all kinds of different various conferences throughout Canada and the United States. Human resource conferences, social workers, working with teachers, working with police. And it's been a wild ride over the last 18 years that pretty much fills all of my day. And even with the pandemic now, people are still very hungry and in need of soft skill development. Yes. And so my ability to understand change and help people deal with stress and overwhelm, we find today we're busier than ever, except we're not, we're traveling through the airports. We're doing it all virtual like we are right now.
Absolutely. It is very, very interesting to listen to your story. And I feel like the one thing that you mentioned, that you went out to talk about your business experiences, but you ended up talking about your life experiences without having planned that. I feel like that goes to show what a great leader you are. Because there comes a point where you sort of learn to mix the two things and then not get affected by that. So that's absolutely wonderful. And it's definitely very, very inspiring.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, one of the things that, especially nowadays, with so many people going through change and struggling and fear and uncertainty, young people entering the marketplace, people that have been in the marketplace 20 years, we just don't know what's around the corner. And when all of this happened, I found myself in very familiar emotional territory. I used to go to bed underneath a concrete viaduct full of fear and anxiety, and I would wake up the next morning with problems that didn't have solutions. But what I understand today is there is a solution, and we're not always going to be here. And the most important thing we need to do every single day is to continue to stay in action, to move towards whatever worthwhile goals that we want to materialize in our life.
Absolutely. And it must also have been very interesting to be in an age where the digital revolution sort of hadn't happened yet and you were still producing content. So how do you feel about that? Because when you started off, it was entirely different. And now it's a very commonplace thing to be doing that. So how do you feel about that?
It's funny, I say to people that I used to, I was around, I had brown hair when the internet first came out, and it is interesting to see how exciting and extraordinary the world is today, digitally. It's exciting. There's just, every time I turn around, I see a new innovation, and young people today are building that workplace of tomorrow. And as someone who's a lifelong learner, I get excited about it. There were times when I didn't like it because it's like constant change, and we don't like change. But if you lean into it like I do, this is how I've been successful, and you embrace those things, it just seems like every day is new. And it wasn't like that for me when I was growing up. Things were, they didn't move as fast as they did. So, I mean, it can be either or. It can overwhelm you, or it can be an incredibly exciting ride. And I choose to see it the latter.
Absolutely. So talking about your success, one of the things that you have been very vocal about is having experienced both catastrophic failure and extraordinary success. So we've just spoken about that, but we'd love to hear more about it.
Well, I think that adversity introduces us to ourselves. It always says the same thing. You've got more than you realize you did. And I think one of the greatest tragedies is when somebody goes through life and they don't experience a lot of adversity, because adversity thrusts us into the deep end of the pool and forces us to adapt. And when we do that, we learn things about ourselves. And so today, my greatest assets came from being homeless, from struggling with addiction, from struggling with mental health, from going through all those crises with stress and uncertainty and fear and poverty. Because Today, I can now stand in front of a group of people and connect with them in a deep and empathic way. The greatest assets that and that's just not my story, that's all of us. We're going to look back at this time in a year or two from now and go, wow, did I ever learn a heap going through the crisis that we just went through. Organizations, countries, people, just everything is reevaluating itself. And when that happens, there is a tremendous amount of growth. The challenge right now is we're still feeling the negative emotion stuff. So we're not necessarily taking stock of the assets that we're actually building.
Absolutely. And when you put it like that, it's very interesting to see how life was before the pandemic, how it was during the pandemic, and how it's bound to be post-pandemic. So my next question to you is that you have undoubtedly refined what is possible through your experiences as well as your work. So in that light, what approaches do you think leaders can follow to redefine what productivity means in a post-pandemic workplace?
I think it's taking a look at a possibility versus a probability mindset. This is probably one of the greatest leaders that I think are the greatest assets that leaders need to embrace. Looking at the world not as it is, but how it could be. This is what great parents do. This is what great mentors do. This is what great coaches do. They don't play to what is seen on the surface. They play to what's underneath. And the greatest leaders in my life didn't work with what was in front of them. They worked with what they knew I had, and they drew it out. Well, we can do that for ourselves. We can do that for our family members, our community, our businesses, and the world around us. When we lead with a possibility mindset, we enter into that right side of our brain and we access creativity, which is the heartbeat of innovation. If we have a probability mindset, in other words, looking at the world not optimistically and sort of, that's the way it was tomorrow, it's going to be more of that today and tomorrow. If that's the way it was, yesterday, it's going to be like that tomorrow. That doesn't leave any space for anything new to happen. And so I think the foundation upon all great leadership needs to be a possibility or an innovative mindset.
That's absolutely amazing, and that's a very, very different way of looking at it. So that just your nuanced answer just shows how well versed you are in what you do. So that's absolutely amazing. So to those who are looking to walk down a journey that is similar to yours and be successful as leaders, what advice would you have? Something that you probably had at the back of your mind when you started out as a leader.
Be gentler with yourself and the people around you. I'm a very type A driver, and I think today more than ever we need to be more sensitive to people, their passions, and what really floats their boat. If you're going to get people to follow you, you need to lead with sort of really great empathy and vision. I think the biggest mistake I made in my company, not as a speaker, today I get this stuff, but back then was not really understanding the people around me. If they're behind you, they will go to the ends of the earth with you and for the organization's goals. But if you don't tap into their purpose and get their buy-in, I think you're going to have a hard go at it, because anything great worth accomplishing is going to take a team of people, not one person, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's very great to listen to you talk about things that happened at a point, but you now realize that, that could have been different, or we are making active changes to change those things. So that's absolutely amazing. And that brings me to my last question today. So do you have a quote that best describes your feelings towards the future of work, workplace, and you?
Yeah, I do. Now, but I have to tell you a story. In 1989, when I was homeless, I lived in the downtown east side of Vancouver, one of the poorest postal codes in Canada. And I met this man who spent probably about 7 minutes with me, and his name was Gus. And at the time, Gus spoke to my potential, my possibility. And he said to me, he looked at me with these beautiful blue eyes. He was an older man, and he said, "Joe, there's more to you than you can see."
Yeah.
At the time, I was homeless. I had dirty hair, black fingernails from dirty hands. I had broken yellow teeth, scruffy beard. But he looked past what was on the surface and spoke to my potential. And he said, there's more to you than you can see. And he said, if you were to get your life together, you could go on to do extraordinary things. I believe that the greatest tragedy is life is that not that it ends too soon, it's that we wait too long to begin it. Inside me and inside you and inside everyone watching this is an unlimited, untapped possibility and potential. And when we get that, and we then dedicate our actions to work that has passion and meaning, and pick up that mantle of our opus and march forward with courageous action, we can and we will change the world. And so my quote is what Gus gave me on that park bench 30 years ago, that there's more to you than you can see.
That is so inspiring, Joe. And I'm so glad that that happened and that you are here today to talk with us. I am literally so inspired right now. And I'm sure that the same thing is happening to our viewers and listeners. And I don't think we could have ended this interview on a better note than that. So thanks a lot for everything. Thanks a lot for talking to us today and giving us that insight, because I'm sure we're all in need of it when we're just getting out of the pandemic. So thanks a lot. And again, it was a pleasure having you over.
Pleasure was mine. Thank you. Thank you.